time it felt right drinking cherry wine with you. Just wanted to own it, just wanted to take the time, learn all the things that I could about you. Now it's such a mess here, oh we are just stressed here, used to be so easy with you.
Well, thanks for coming on my show today, Connie.
Well, thank you for letting me be here.
Tell my viewers what you're running for, what the whole district encompasses.
Okay, well, I am running to finish the term for Congressman Devin Nunes. So it's a special election to finish. The congressman did the first year of a 2-year term, and then they did the redistricting, redrew some lines, and his district was going to be going away. So he took a great job, a new job with President Trump, and there's still a year left to serve on his term. And so I put my name in the hat to run for the special election to finish out that term.
Wow, those are some big shoes to fill.
They're very much so.
But you have a lot of experience, so tell us about all the things that you've done thus far.
Well, gosh, I've had many blessings in my life and reinvented myself many times, but my political career started in 2000 when I ran for the Tulare County Board of Supervisors. My father, after a full career with the telephone company, ran for the Board of Supervisors in 1980, and he was successful, and he served 3 terms. He was in the middle of his 3rd term.
So it runs in the family. That's awesome.
It's a political gene. It's hard to, yeah. So he served there. We did lose him to cancer in the middle of his 3rd term.
Oh, wow.
Very young, only 65, which looks very young through my eyes these days. But
that is young.
10 years after that is when I made the decision to run for the old seat that he had held.
Wow.
Yeah, it was kind of a sentimental thing, and in hindsight, yeah.
What did you think, though? Was it daunting, though, to get into politics?
You know, if I'd have really thought about it, I wouldn't have done it. That's pretty honest. But, yeah. But at the time, it seemed like the thing to do. So I did, and I was successful. And I served 2 terms on the Tulare County Board of Supervisors. And while I was doing that, I also served as the president of the California State Association of Counties. There's 58 counties in California. They all have 5 members of a Board of Supervisors. San Francisco mixes a city council and a Board of Supervisors, but for the most part, the counties have the 5 representatives, and then they have a professional organization.
So you were overseeing that? That's a lot.
So I did that too.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, you know, when you start things late in life, you get pretty ambitious. And, you know, if I'd have been 20 when I started, I would have said, it can wait. But at a certain point, you just say, hey, I'm here. I might as well do that. So when I'm in, I'm all in. And I left the board. I wasn't defeated. I mean, I didn't have to leave. But there was an opportunity to serve in the California State Legislature on the Assembly side. So after 8 years on the Tulare County Board, I ran for the state legislature and was successful. And I served as the assembly member from District 34. It changed in the middle and became District 26 through redistricting. And that's something and that's actually a part of why I'm in this contest today. Every 10 years when we have a census, then they redraw the lines for all your city councils, your school boards, your Board of Supervisors, legislature, and even Congress. So that was part of what happened this time for Congressman Nunes. They redraw the lines. They actually split his district up into 4 parts, and as of next January 2nd, that district will no longer exist. So it's complicated, and but hopefully it'll be pretty simple when people get a ballot. It will say Congressional District 22 special election, because there'll be another District 22 election on the same ballot for some people. So it gets confusing, but that's basically what happened. They redistricted Congressman Nunes' district away.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then you spent 6 years in Sacramento, you were saying.
I did. There were times when I looked around and asked myself, what's a nice girl like me doing in a place like this? But for the most part, it was, you know, it is a political gene, maybe, but it's a call to service. And I decided that I just couldn't be a person that stood on the sidelines and complained. You know, sometimes they say, you know, put up or shut up. And it wasn't that I was particularly vocal, but I saw the opportunity and just felt that I had the right life skills, that maybe I could go and accomplish some things. And I'm really proud of the body of work that I had there in Sacramento. I actually served as the minority leader or the Republican Assembly leader for 4 of the 6 years that I served in Sacramento. I actually am the longest serving actually leader on both sides of the aisle
Wow.
since term limits. Yeah, it's usually a 2-year gig. Someone decides that they can do a better job than you, and so they move to vacate the chair. But I was lucky enough to have the support of the caucus, so I stayed for the 4 years.
And how do you think that prepared you now? Because you had that experience actually being there, seeing how things are really done. You got taken out of the valley, put in there. What did you learn during that time?
Well, you learn the art of politics. It's more like the art of war. But you just really, to me, it's almost a chess game, a behind-the-scenes chess game, because you want to be effective for your district. At the same time, you are responsible for making decisions that impact the entire state. And then there's the two-party system where you have to navigate through all of that. So it can become complicated, but I really enjoyed it. And I think that, well, after I finished that and I was termed out there, I spent a couple of years just doing some consulting. But then I was appointed by President Trump to run the Farm Service Agency for the state of California under the USDA. So I was a California Executive Director. Again, a culmination of skills, and it was a political appointment, but I really enjoyed that work because agriculture is so important to the Central Valley, but this was about agriculture throughout the state.
And what did you think when you were in Sacramento? Because I've talked to many people about this, and I know they just have no idea the struggles that are really going on here with farming, with irrigation. What did you help bring to light in that time that you were there? Did you really like kind of try to open their eyes as much as possible to problems that exist right now?
As much as possible. But part of that, it's almost education, and I hate to use that word that way. But, you know, Congressman Valadeo came to the caucus. He was one of the elections. I managed to pick up 4 seats, and he came to Sacramento as a brand new freshman there, and he and I kind of organized an agricultural tour. Interesting, it was kind of based on something that Congressman Nunes had done for his congressional district, so Valadeo and I did the same thing, and we brought some folks from Sacramento, other legislators from different parts of California, and did a little tour of the valley, of farming, of dairying, of a creamery, of a water plant, you know, everything we could think of to help. Because I think sometimes it's very helpful to put your feet in someone else's shoes, if that makes sense. And as I think about that, Toni Atkins from San Diego, she's now the Senate Pro Tem, so she's the leader on the Senate side. She's still serving in the legislature, and she was one of the ones that came down. And of course, San Diego has a lot of agriculture, not the area where she lived, but she came down and did the tour. So you just never know. And I think you form relationships with people, and then try to, with empathy, understand where they're coming from with their proposals. But in return, you know, you want a little bit of respect and some empathy for these are the problems that are problematic for us. I think one of the problems, wherever you're serving in California, wherever you live or whatever you do, is certainly the water. The water wars have been going on forever, and it's really an issue that we really need to solve. I constantly tell people where I live, where we live here in the Central Valley, agua es vida, water is life, and we all need it, whether we're farmers or farm workers, whether we live in a city, county government, you know, everybody needs that water for life. And so it's frustrating on one hand that it has to be a political football and there has to be an argument about it. For someone like me, that is just so frustrating. I was fond of saying, we can argue about all these other things politically. I get that. People are on different sides of issues. But water should be something we agree on, something that we all share. It's something we all have in common. And it was a little frustrating for me. But with this new adventure, if I'm successful in winning this special election, I'm sure I'll be talking about water back in Washington, D.C.
That would be great. And then what are some of the main things? So water is up there of one of the things that you really want to change. What are some other changes you hope to make in this next year if elected?
Well, one of the reasons I decided to do this, I felt like I could hit the ground running just because of my experience. And many of the people that are serving in the California delegation on both sides of the aisle, I worked with them. Many of them came from the Assembly or boards of supervisors. So I'm not unfamiliar with the, what you would call the California delegation. And I think what people think about Congress, maybe even the legislature, that it's just a bunch of people fighting all the time. But there really is work in the district, and I'm very interested in that. Your congressional representative really is your liaison to the federal government. So in addition to water, which is very important, things that happen in your district office would be Veterans Affairs, very active with taking care of the veterans. Social Security is a big issue that the congressional office gets a lot of calls on. Passports, it may seem simple, but people go on vacation and their passport expires and they're someplace and they can't get home, and the congressional office is where you turn to for help with that. The post office, not saying I can solve all of those problems, but those come, and even military academy appointments. So I really saw an opportunity to give back and to really help with all of those issues in a way that's meaningful. And yes, it's a quick turnaround, but currently, since we have no congressman, we don't have a vote. This district doesn't have its voice represented voting-wise, and Mrs. Pelosi's clerk is actually overseeing the operations of the district. And I would just prefer that that be someone local who really knows the district and knows the issues and is ready to go to work.
What advice has Devin Nunes given you, and does he support you filling his shoes in this role?
I think Devin I've known him for so long. I think Devin probably feels like I do. It's an interesting career opportunity to seek. That's putting it nicely. And it takes a certain type of individual that wants to do that. Maybe there's a little craziness to all of us that seek to do this. But in the end, it's about the opportunity to make a difference for people. And a lot of the issues, Devin and I are very like-minded on those issues. So I think that he believes that someone has to do it, and I think he's hopeful that I'll be successful. And he feels like I'm the right person. Now that it's down to just two of us, there were 6 candidates in the original, in the April 5th election part. So it's down to just 2 candidates now. So.
And what did he start that you said, hey, if I do this, I want to finish this too? Because that's a lot of people, they start things and then, he didn't get to see it through. Is there any issues in particular that he started that you want to finish for him?
Well, I think he's been the water champion, for the whole state from Washington, D.C. perspective. And so, of course, that... there's an old saying, I think it was Mark Twain, that said, whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting over. I don't expect in 6 months to completely solve the water issue, but I just want to not let down on the progress that has been made. And so just use the opportunity to keep it in the forefront and make sure that people still care about it. I think they do when they get their water bill, or when they turn the faucet on, or when they're told you can't run your sprinklers at all. I mean, it takes these kinds of things that, wake people up. And I don't blame people. I feel like most people, they're just doing their thing. They wake up every day, they go to work, they pay their taxes, they worship at their place of choice, they volunteer if they're able to. They just want to go to their kids' or their grandkids' soccer games on the weekend. they don't live and breathe politics every day until it hits home, until something like the water issue comes up. But I think elections altogether will be something that people would be more aware of. School board elections are going to be big with all the national attention to school curriculum and who's actually serving on school boards. I think the pandemic brought many forces to the front, some good, some not so bad, not so good. But I think it certainly made people very aware that maybe their freedom is at stake here. And I think we'll be talking about some of the issues that were caused during the pandemic to really wake people up and say, hey, this isn't right. You know, we have a voice and we have a vote and we need to use it. And I think that's a good thing. I think people should, you know, voting is such a personal right and something that everyone has, every citizen has. And I think it's important that people exercise that right and have the opinion. And going to vote is just, to me, it's something sacred. I don't do the mail-in either. I want to go and personally vote.
What is something that you think voters need to be most mindful of that you see that we're not really paying attention to when we do vote?
Well, they always say elections have consequences. And sometimes everything is not, what you see is not what you get. And politics is very much a blood sport. And you'll see political advertisements. And, of course, people want their opinion to be in the forefront. And they want to have their ideas. They want to convince you that they're the right person because their ideas are the best. It takes a little research. And I know people may not have time for it.
That's a big one.
It is. I mean, I'm hopeful that people will do just a little bit of homework. Of course, with the media, you know, you don't know what you're going to get, and you're experienced with that. So you know from back in the day, I just think you have to really do your homework. But you can rely on others. I mean, if you're associated with groups or things that are important, I'm happy to see that parents are going to school board meetings. You know, and it's probably hard. They work, and then these school board meetings are at night, or maybe they're held when they're at work, and both parents can't go because you have children at home. But I applaud that. I want everybody to understand as much as they can, as crazy as it may seem. Get involved, see the issues, know the issues if you can, and know what's important to you, and don't be afraid to use your voice. And please, please vote. It's so important.
When you were appointed by President Trump for the agricultural position, why do you think you were put in that role?
Well, I think that, as I say, politics is interesting. So you had a Republican president, so his appointees, not all, but many of them were Republican. When you're a political appointee, you always know that your lifespan is limited. It's not like an election, it's an appointment. So my appointment ended on Inauguration Day when Joe Biden was sworn in. But actually Congressman Nunes, Congressman McCarthy, the congressmen have a lot to say. They weighed in on it. Agricultural groups, you know, contacted the president and said, you know, we think she would really be good at this. She's from an agricultural community. She has elected experience. So it was
You must have been doing some great things
It was,
in that time to have gotten to that point. Where were some of the changes that you had made when you served to have gotten to that point, do you think?
Well, I think it's a culmination of a body of work. I think they're just looking for someone, first of all, that could handle the job. And I had life experience before politics, so I had managed.
So what's a little bit of that?
I had managed some companies before. The last one, actually, I worked for a company called Corvell, and I ran the Valley for them. That was workers' compensation disability management. That's a mouthful, but that's actually working with insurance companies, but also with patients and also with medical hospitals and also medical supplies. Just a combination
Wow.
of things that, yeah, so it was a big territory to run. So yeah, I had a little bit of, you know, business background and experience. And then, of course, you know, as leader in the legislature, your job is to win elections, but also you have to keep your caucus moving and flowing. So there's budgeting and overseeing staff. I have great staff, very blessed. Great staff is something we all need in life, at least I do. And so it was, I hired people before. So I
You knew
think,
how to delegate responsibilities.
yeah, and pick the right people and try to put the right people in the right place. That's really important, I think, in today's world, and give people an opportunity. If you set people up to succeed, I think they will. If you set them up to fail, I suppose they might fail too. So I'm all about rising tide lifts all boats, and let's all work together and get the best job done that we can.
Well, thank you so much for coming on my show. This is really great to get to know you a little bit more and what you represent.
you.
So when do we get to vote for you?
June 7th, there'll be a lot of things on the ballot, but I would appreciate if everybody would make sure and vote for me on June 7th. It'll say CD 22 special election.
And it is, again, for the district. I know we were trying to figure
Yeah.
out what the district is. Can you name what areas this encompasses?
It encompasses part of Tulare County and part of Fresno County. For people that are going to vote, if they've ever voted for Congressman Nunes before, then they live in that old district.
Okay, so yeah, so if they had seen that they voted for him last. Okay, then
Right.
this is-
So
okay.
they'll actually have 2 congressional votes, though. One in the special, if you lived in the old Nunes district, and then one for a new person to be the new congressional representative next year. I know, confusing.
No, it's great. That's why when I asked you to break it down, it's just every politician that's come on, they were trying to break down with the new districting. So thank
Yeah,
you. You've done
yeah.
a great job at doing that. Thank you so much for coming.
Oh
on
my
the
gosh,
show.
I had a great time. Thank you so
Where
much.
can we,
SPARKL.
lastly, to look for when you're going to be speaking in your campaign? Just any news on that? Where can we
Oh,
look for
my
that?
website would be connieforcongress.com, and there's information on there on
At social media,
what's
or-
happening.
Are they
I
active
do.
on posting that for you?
They are on. That's my website. Also, I think it's Connie for Congress or Connie Conway for Congress on Facebook, and I'm on Twitter marginally.
What about Instagram?
I haven't mastered that skill yet.
No, Rob. No, we got you. Well, so if anybody wants to donate money to your campaign, they can go to the website.
Yes.
And you'll talk about speaking engagements. Are we going to be somewhere like on the 8th, or we can go and be updated on that?
Yes, yeah. I'll make sure that's there.
Great. Thank
Especially
you.
if you're going to come.
I will
SPARKL.
come and support you. You tell me when, and I'll be there.
I appreciate that so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on my show today, Terry.
It's a pleasure, SPARKL. Good to see you.
So for my viewers that don't know anything about you, give us a little bit of background.
How far back do you want to go?
I'd like to talk about a little bit about your Marine career.
Okay, so I did the Marine Corps differently, and I understand you know a little bit about the Marines. So I joined the Marine Corps after college. So my years in the Marine Corps were 84 to 88, but that would make you go, but how could you be a retired Marine Corps major? Because when I got out in 88, because there was nothing going on that interested me in the Marine Corps, I went in, and you're far too young to remember this, but I went right after the Beirut bombing. thinking that that was going to be the global war on terror, which ultimately became 9/11. But I thought it was going to happen when Beirut, we had 241 dead Marines in October 1983 in Beirut, the first big truck bombing. So I got out in 88, moved to Fresno in 90, had a family, got married, had lots of kids, traveled extensively in my career. And then on 9/11, however, was far, far, far too old per the regulations to be back in the Marine Corps. But the Marine Corps, I'm also a Queens, New York native and knew a number of people that died in those buildings.
Wow.
And however, you don't go back in the Marine Corps when you're 41. Now, when General Petraeus decided that he wanted to do the surge in Al Anbar province, Iraq, in 2005, 2006, they said, we need a whole bunch of Marines right now. Okay, and you can't make them that fast. So historically, they would reach back to the previous war, but it had been a long time since Desert Storm in 1991. So they started saying on a case-by-case basis, we'll give waivers to you older guys who stayed really fit. So in 2006, at the age of 46, I was sworn back in as a captain, and then did 2 Iraqs and 2 Afghanistans, and was given full retirement in 2013.
What was that like, and what did your wife think about you having to go back? Because that must have been shocking for your family.
Well, I didn't have to go back.
Well, I mean, just
I
the
asked
fact
to.
that you were.
She's the greatest woman in the world. We've been together
parent.
39 years.
I love that.
And she thought, she knew I needed to do it. I needed to do this. But when I went, we had kids a little bit late. So when I went away the first time, the kids were 12, 10, 8, and 6.
Aww.
Okay, and I missed, on each of those tours, at least 10 months. One time I was gone 13 straight months.
Oh, man.
And again, they are the stud warriors of stud warriors, and I am married to Xena, warrior princess. And so, then I come back here, I retire from the Marine Corps, and need to make a lot of time up with the kids. So the kids at that time, when I retired in 13, my oldest was a high school senior. Then I had, 1, 2 years behind that, 2 years behind that, 2 years behind that, and just everything was family, family, family all the time. Then fortuitously, karmically, if you will, my predecessor on the school board, a fellow named Brooke Ashton, who I suspect you know, I just happened, who again, we were not close friends, I happened to have a constituent service issue with him. He was the trustee, I was a constituent. I had 4 kids in the school. I brought it to his attention, and he happened to take a phone call at the time, at which point he, rightly or wrongly, in front of a constituent, I heard him say, no, I really don't like, because he had declared he was not going to run for office again. I heard him say, no, I'm not particularly thrilled with the people who have declared to run for my seat. This was on a Thursday. There were 5 days left in the filing period. And Thursday night, I went home and I prayed. Didn't say any word to my lovely, patient, and tolerant wife. But I called Brooke on Monday. And I said, you said you were not thrilled with who's running. If I ran, would you endorse me? And he goes, are you serious? And I said, as a heart attack. And he became my de facto campaign manager, and the rest, as they say, is history. And that was 42, 43 months ago.
And then that's a big task to take on. What made you think that you could do that and want to do that?
Because the school, that's a great question. That is the seminal question, okay? Hence why you're in that seat, okay? My baby boy, class of 19 at Bullard High School, all of my kids, 2 girls, 2 boys, girl, girl, boy, boy, all of them were, the kids that you can, if I said to you that the 4 Slatic kids were all homecoming king, queen nominees, prom king, queen nominees, Sadie Hawkins king, queen nominees, on and on and on, they're probably not crappy kids.
Right.
Is that reasonable? Okay. My baby boy would be in that same thing. And he gets to laud over his siblings. He's the only one, they were all nominated. He's the only one who actually won homecoming king, or maybe it was formal, but
Okay.
one of those. So, the crappy kids, that everyone hates don't get that. One day, about a year before he graduated, before this all came about, my wife is in Denver. We met in school, attending Colorado State University, where she's from. And I get the call because she's number 1 on the phone list, but she's out of state, about an incident that occurred at Bullard High School, where a teacher during a classroom turnover period, finds a letter left on a desk, opens it, and starts reading it, and it says, "I am going to kill Tommy Slatic." So I get a front row seat to the complete dysfunctionality of the 20th largest school district in the country, third largest in the state, Fresno Unified School District, and I'm on record numerous times as saying they cannot find their butt with both hands and a flashlight. They couldn't then, they can't now. They stonewall everything. Anything's uncomfortable, they bury it and they hide it. It's a dysfunctional place, and it's destroying the kids in this city. That's why I'm here.
So what was the outcome of that?
A kid got expelled, but within a half an hour of me engaging in a conversation with the vice principal on this topic, they actually began denying that the letter even existed because they realized they had a bulldog on them who wasn't going to, because
You were going to take a threat lightly.
I'm not going to take threats lightly at all because, does he have friends? Is he gang affiliated? What does he look like? Is he going to be coming by my house? I have other children, You can't, and that led to this complete cover-up. You can't know this. And some of the points that they can't tell you information, they are valid. But as I've become completely inside and immersed myself in this job 50, 60 hours a week, having the luxury of being able to do that, a bunch of the stuff they fed me was a bunch of crap. And that's what they feed the parents whenever they don't want to talk about things that are uncomfortable. And this is going to change. And it's people hate change. You know that is a human nature. People despise change. And I'm going to drag this district kicking and screaming into the accountability realm.
Well, there's a lot of things that need changes, and a lot of people need to be accountable. What are some of the changes that you're going to make during this?
Well, the first thing, let's start with saving kids. It's bulletproof data, SPARKL, bulletproof, that, we are what's termed a majority-minority district.
Correct, yeah.
We have many, 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 many tens of thousands. Let's get the scale. We must frame the discussion. Fresno Unified School District, 20th biggest district in the nation. Pre-COVID budget of billions. I use pre-COVID versus post-COVID or COVID because there's all funny money there and one-time pots of money that may or may not ever show up again. So let's keep everything in a static mode and discuss pre-COVID of multi-billion-dollar budget, which is double that of the city of Fresno budget pre-COVID. So this is the big thing. 10,305 employees as of 2 weeks ago. Largest employer in the state of California north of the Grapevine. Did you know that?
No.
Largest employer, 111 school sites.
That's awesome.
Well, it's awesome if you do it well. It's catastrophic
if you're doing
if
it
you're
wrong.
doing it poorly. We have this giant number of English language learners and data, academia data, the literature, if you will,
Right.
is bulletproof. That if little Johnny and little Susie who grow up speaking Spanish are not redesignated as English speakers by the end of third grade, their statistical likelihood of a good outcome in high school is catastrophic, And we're terrible at it. And we keep funding these programs to fix this. And just in my years on the board, I'll give you just one granular, and we could do a 3-hour show on this if you ever, or have that much masochism in you, is 7 years ago, before I was on the board, they started a designated school program that funded an additional 30 minutes of learning for first 2 years, 20 elementary schools, then year 3 and 4, 20 more, then year 5 and 6, 20 more. So ultimately it's 60 of our lowest performing elementary schools, an extra 30 minutes a day of reading. The data is bulletproof. Over 6 years of tracking the exact same kids, no improvement. We spent $31 million doing this, SPARKL. And guess what? This ridiculous board of radical people that I sit with, they renewed the program for year 7, even though after 6 years it's displayed no improvement. That's how this place runs. Because in failed public education, at the large scale, there's lots of money.
They wanted the funding.
Lots and lots of money. And the teachers, again, I love teachers, but the teachers union is destroying them. Why
They have to do things a certain way, whether or not they want to.
Why every teacher spending almost a couple grand a year to Emmanuel Bonilla and his Fresno Teachers Association union. I have no idea why. The Janus decision, which you may or may not be familiar with, is a federal decision about 8 years ago in Chicago. You cannot be forced to pay political dues to an organization whose outlook you disagree with. It's sort of the Janus decision. So if you disagree with the politics of Fresno Teachers Association, gang, you don't have to pay them your dues. But yet these people all do, which funds all these ridiculous programs to continue these non-performing programs.
So what are you going to do to change that?
Well, you got to change it this way. Okay, I'm not a politician. I'm an elected person. Those are two entirely different things. Your previous guest is a politician. I'm not. Okay, I got elected to fix things. Okay, I think you know enough about what a guy like me would have done in Afghanistan for 4 years to know, let's figure out how to fix it, and then we fix it granularly. Well, to do that, it takes 4 votes out of 7. So I spend 25 hours a week for the last almost 4 years finding people that are going to be extremely qualified candidates to run in this November's election cycle to get rid of some of these ridiculous social justice warriors that sit on this board with me.
That's a lot. So how's that worked out so far?
Well, let's ask me the day after election in November.
What are some of the things that you're looking to fix? What do you think about the problem, like with our mental health crisis, for example?
It's terrible.
And I know suicides have spiked as the second cause of death between 10 and 14-year-olds. What can we do? What can someone in your position even do?
Well, it was all predictable. Okay, so the superintendent of Fresno Unified, as I'm sure you know, is Bob Nelson. And contrary to popular belief, Bob and I get along great. I like Bob. It's like, oh my God, you want to hurt Bob? And no, I like Bob. We have an excellent level of rapport. His deputy superintendent, Misty Herr, we have an excellent level of rapport. I want them to hold their people accountable. So accountability in the Marine Corps, from the time I stepped on those yellow footprints, and I'm sure you get that euphemism back in the day, you're accountable for every single thing you do and every single thing you fail to do. And if you're a leader, you're accountable for everything those underneath you do and everything that those underneath you fail to do. Okay, we get a little bit of the first half of that and absolutely none of the second half of that here. We have, we could go on for an hour on just complete catastrophes where no one has been held accountable. I'll give you one. So 3 years ago, we hired a new principal at a major high school here in town. That principal has a boss. That principal's boss, meaning chain of command stuff.
Got it.
The principal's boss is called a supervisor of schools or an instructional superintendent. Over the course of the first 12 months, that boss of that school principal has this list of 14 things that are educational code oriented that you must enculturate that this person has these inherent skills. I knew they weren't getting done at this high school site, and I asked Superintendent Nelson on a particular day to, after that year had fully passed, to take two of his primary inside people that I completely trust, because there are excellent people that work here. Please don't think that I'm not saying that there are. Not as many as we need, however. And go at the exact same time, again, with Mr. Nelson's permission and direction, because the only person I'm allowed to legally give direction to is the superintendent. This is a distinction that most people don't get. People go, oh, the school board the trustee is all powerful and you can tell the custodian to do A, B, C, and D. Well, you can. He can also tell you to do that.
It's a chain of command, so that's...
Well, it's more important. This is a legal point. So there's 7 trustees. They have 1 employee. Remember, we have 10,305 employees. The trustees have 1. The superintendent. The other 10,304 work for the superintendent. Now, if I walk up to a school principal and say, I think that burning car in your parking lot is probably a really bad idea, you should do something about it, I'm going to bet you dimes to donuts that they're going to do something about it. But the only person that you have legal authority to actually direct is the superintendent. So in this particular anecdote, Mr. Nelson, would you please ask so-and-so and so-and-so to go to these 2 individuals at the exact same time at 2 different places and say, hey, Here's the list of these 14 things that you were supposed to have taught him and you were supposed to have learned from him in the last year. Okay, how many of them did you do? And the one person who was supposed to be taught them gave a number that was substantially lower than 14, and the other one refused to answer the question at all. And Mr. Nelson, who I like, refused to hold anybody accountable for complete performance. Because remember, a principal at a major high school here, they're in charge of a small city. We've got 120 teachers on one of our major high schools. We've got 2,600 kids. That's a small city. We have cities in the valley that are far smaller than that.
Yes.
And if the person in charge of training that person to this legal standard has completely failed it and won't answer the questions, I think, Bob, you need to hold that person accountable. But we don't, because no one has ever been fired from this place. Now, we pay a lot. People love to work here. So we pay teachers more than any place else, outside of San Francisco possibly. If you're a, to use the nomenclature, it's a whole new vernacular, education speak versus military speak versus broadcast speak.
I get it,
okay?
yeah.
So if you're a level 5, step 10 teacher, which is not that absurd, you've been here for 15 years, you've done some extra stuff, you're making $93,000 a year to be a classroom teacher. It's pretty darn good money, especially since the last census showed that the median household income in Fresno is $50,300. Okay, that's median. And yet, we are such a poor district, 75% of the families that send their kids to us have household incomes of $28,000 or less. So if you're a teacher making 93, good. I expect a lot out of you. And remember though, SPARKL, that's for an 8.5 month a year gig. You take your spring break, your winter break, your this and
Yeah, when
that.
it comes to days, it's only like 100 and something.
Right. And the days are only 6.5 hours long.
Right.
Okay, so 93 grand for a 6.5 hour gig that's only 8 months long a year. And again, that's a teacher. You want to be an administrator, you want to be a vice principal and make 120 grand. You want to be a principal at a major high school and make 190,000. Okay, you know this guy. I watched your show, excellent interview with Jerry Dyer. Everyone knows who he is. Everyone. The most recognizable face in Central California, in my opinion. He gets paid X to be the most recognizable guy. Fresno Unified has 500 employees that get paid more than Jerry Dyer. And you can't tell me the names of 5 of them. Okay? Jerry is completely accountable. Yes, it may only be to the voters every 4 years at this point in his career, but he's out there on TV, media every day working his fanny off. God bless him. Great man. We have 500 people. And I stopped counting because this is all on a California Gov website. It's all a public thing. I stopped counting at 500 because I was sick to my stomach that we have 500 people that get paid more than the most recognizable, accountable person in Central California. Okay, let's get context. We pay Superintendent Nelson $341,000 a year. Okay, and we're in the bottom 5% of national urban school districts. Okay, I got a lot of respect for $341,000 a year. I would expect that trajectory would be going like this during his 6-year tenure. It's not.
So how do we change it though?
4 votes on the board. But the complexity of understanding the problem. Dr. Einstein also famously said, if I had 60 minutes to save the world, I'd spend 55 minutes understanding the problem, then 5 minutes saving the world. Understanding the complexity of FUSD with its 111 school sites, multi-billion-dollar budget, 10,000 employees, and a level of nepotism that is unfounded in my experience in life. And I've been to 49 states, 34 countries, and 2 wars. And my 18-year hiatus from the military was a corporate existence. I understand stuff. I've never seen a nepotistic environment like this.
Thank you so much for coming on my show and explaining all this to me. So,
I'm sorry for the data dump.
I mean, hey, you got your facts, and so we need to vote. When is the voting for you? It's in November.
November, and there's no primary in school
yeah,
board.
exactly.
Things.
It's just straight.
And I'm running against the sixth richest person in Fresno County, Darius Assemi. You may have heard of him.
Oh, wow.
He decided that he wants me out of this seat for whatever reason, and it's certainly his opportunity to spend his millions of dollars to do so. So, you know, I look forward to having him make that case that he gets to decide who gets to be in political office. But again, that's for another show.
Thank you so much for coming on my show.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you so much for coming on my show today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so explain to my viewers what you do.
So I am a real estate agent with Realty Concepts. Yeah.
And so when people are looking to buy homes, businesses,
Yep.
all of it.
Yep. All of the above. I'm your gal.
Right, and that's really fascinating because not a lot of people that sell homes actually sell business properties as well.
You know, I just started getting into the commercial end of it, which, you know, I was so excited and blessed. I ended up being the agent chosen to list, along with my partner, Pat, George's shish kebab down in downtown Fresno in the Galleria. So that's been my first commercial experience, which is so amazing.
Have you guys seen a lot of businesses have to fold because of COVID?
You know, not really. It seems like what I've noticed is a lot of people are putting on their like entrepreneur hat and just like coming up with these ways on how can like different lines of being creative, you know, just thinking outside the box. Like, what can I do to like pull business in? And it's really neat to see in our community.
So right now you're representing some people and like, I'm looking because I want to do this and that and then.
Yeah, well actually he has been in the restaurant business for 35 years. Huge staple in the Fresno community.
Right.
And he's like, you know what? I'm ready just to retire, enjoy life, spend time with the grandkids, you know. So, and more power to him. He has blessed our community.
Oh my,
Yeah.
wow. So how long have you been in the game?
Well, actually, I've only been in the game a little less than a year as far as like legally having my real estate license.
Really? And then you already got into commercial real estate?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but I've been in I guess you say I've been around and doing real estate almost my whole life. My parents, they're big, you know, property investors and entrepreneurs and do the whole real estate thing. So from a young little
ran
gal,
in the family?
Oh yeah,
That is so
and
cool.
just seeing from square one, like I've seen my parents build several houses. Just from the ground up and even remodeling, taking stuff that people would deem worthy to demolish, they're like, no, and build it back up. And so that's really been my, you know, my apprenticeship, you know, getting to hear different terminologies or getting to know like, no, instead of like, let's put a window up here so that adds in the extra lighting to brighten this space.
Right.
Or if you just add this corner, it will add that much more area to the room. So I was actually in the medical field for the last, since like 2012. But now that my kids, you know, I always say I got into it not only because was that my heart, my passion. I was my grandma's in-home caretaker as well. And then that prompted me to do that. And plus, got good benefits, which got all 3 kids braces and glasses.
So when they were out,
but
you're
now
like,
it's like
now I'm
time
gonna
for mama to do what she wants to
And
do.
that was always doing real estate.
That's
Wow.
always what I wanted to do. Yeah. And
I love
very
that.
passionate about it. And just, you know, when you love something like such as I love real estate, it doesn't feel like work to me. Like I get up in the morning like, okay, I'm going to look at the MLS, like what's on the thing, you know, let me contact my client, like, cause I love doing it. I'm passionate about doing it. So yeah.
That's a really cool story.
Yeah.
What a switch.
Yeah. I mean, but it is a switch as far as on paperwork, but really, real estate and the medical field in my eyes, it almost goes hand in hand in some scenarios. Like, for instance, we need to remember, I'm trying to sell you guys, like, not just a house, it's your home, a place where you can set roots in, a place where maybe you're bringing home your first baby, or maybe I'm helping you sell your house and your loved one just died. Or maybe, so I, as your agent, I want to be there to not only represent you well as far as the logistics, the paperwork, the contracts, but also if you need someone to talk to, if you need someone to help you get through this hard time, that's what I want to be.
Wow. So, okay. So less than a year. Tell us some of the things that you've encountered so far as like selling.
So far, actually, it seems like the market and the world, it's just so crazy with COVID right now. And like in the real estate world, when I got in, we were just barely able to start getting back to the norm, like the open houses, because just a year ago, we couldn't even really have open houses. We couldn't really show how it had to be like either appointment only or virtually, like, Skyping or
that's not good.
Whatever.
That had to be a big challenge.
Right.
There's a big difference in selling.
So I don't have too many stories on that because it's just now getting back to like the norm,
So when you started selling, like, how did you know like you were good and it was good and people were like, yeah, I'm happy with this deal. I'm happy with this home.
Well,
what was the feedback?
I feel like, I just love people. I love talking to people. I love getting out there and hustling. So as far as knowing my gifting of being a natural salesperson, it's like, but I don't know. I just go out and do it, and yeah, each day is a different story.
And you were meeting like your personal quotas, because you have a partner that's been doing it. We're like, oh, this is good. We're on the right path.
Right.
This is going in the right direction.
Yeah, so that's been all good, and just trying to each day like build that up and continue to get referrals and and make something of myself.
So what's the vision now? Because you're doing good, you're doing both commercial, both non-commercial. What's the vision going forward that you hope to do?
You know what? Honestly, I am up for whatever the good Lord puts into my plate. Like I tell my kids too, the Lord will either open doors or he'll shut doors, and you'll know it, And
hey, that's great to use in your house.
Oh, yeah. That was not intended. But literally, like, if something where I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm all up for, even getting into the commercial side of it, or, and it's like that, because that's a whole nother beast, and it's, so yeah, I'm up for whatever, even, home buildings or, just different. Yeah. So it will be interesting to see what this next decade has for myself.
What are the tips you have right now for anybody that wants to purchase a home or wants to purchase a business?
So the biggest thing that I could put out there is, there's this huge conception of right now is a horrible time to buy because, the common person, which I don't blame them or doubt them or what have you, but that's what I'm here for, to educate you as your agent that, when you see the house prices, like for instance, a $400,000 house where maybe a few years ago it was only going for $325,000 or what have you. But we have to remember that lately the APR rates have been historically low, and they did rise a bit by a point as it was predicted, but they're still low compared to like in the 1990s when they're going for like 18%.
Right.
Where now
that makes a huge difference.
Yeah. So
and that's the same with buying a car right now too. Even though it went higher, the interest rates
car
are
and
low.
house is it's the same.
Right.
Like,
okay. So that's where the level is. Then.
Yeah. And so what I tell people is that, okay, even though you see the $400,000 price or label, okay, remember the APR rate is still historically low, even though it went up a bit. So when you, at the end of it, once you want to look at the overall number, what you're paying for your monthly mortgage.
Right.
Because for instance, okay, 5 years ago when you bought that house for cheaper, but the APR rates were higher.
You're paying all
so
this,
hindsight, you're paying almost the same equivalency because even though the price is higher, but the rates were higher then and they're lower now. But we do encourage they are right, they're raising. And like they already went up a point from like a month ago, which running numbers again, going from like and don't quote me on these actual numbers, I'm just
spitballing.
Like, let's say, I think like a month ago, it was like 3.65 and now it's 4.7. So a little over a point. But what that can actually do to just that 1 point, that can add on like to a $400,000 house, $90,000 to your end price.
That's really cool.
So yeah, well, I mean, so that's why as our aide, we're like, hey, if your credit's good, if you've been thinking about buying a house, do it now, guys, because don't let that number scare you. Get with a good agent, a good lending team that has a reputable name behind them, and we can get you into your American dream home,
I love that.
Yeah.
So, Lindsey, where can we contact you if we have questions or we're interested in buying a house or a piece of real estate? Where can we contact you?
So, on my Instagram, it's Lindsey Realty Concepts 1. And then my website is Lindsey Valle, that's V as in Victor, ALLE, .realtyconcepts.com.
And do you show houses actually on the website as well? Some of the houses that you have listed?
Yeah. So you can look on the website or just contact me, and anything that you've been interested in looking, I can go show you. And I'm constantly all day, every day looking at the MLS. So anything that pops up. And the good thing about Realty Concepts is we have a really neat program where we can get you set up into my system, and I can set up alerts. So you'll be like the first to know.
If you don't have anything right now that we want, the moment it becomes available, it's like,
exactly.
Boom. Okay, I love that. That's really cool. And that's same both for commercial properties and residentials.
Yep. Like if you were my client, you're like, Lindsey, I am looking for that brick and mortar, downtown Fresno, this much square footage. I can put that into my system. It will set it. And as soon as something comes up, boing, it will email it to you.
I love that.
It's really neat.
That is so cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on my show. You answered a lot of good questions
thank
today.
you for having me.
And then, I definitely, boy, do I have a lot of questions for you. And rentals. Do you guys do any rental properties or not really?
You know what? Realty Concepts, as that company, they got out of that as far as
everybody has. You can't go to anyone for rentals anymore, I noticed.
But as a real estate agent, if you need me to take a look for you or help you, just give me a call.
So if we kind of do the homework on ourselves, you can guide us a little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
I got it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lindsey.
You're welcome.
Felt right in the moment, felt right in the summertime. It felt right drinking cherry wine with you. Just wanted to own it, just wanted to take the time, learn all the things that I could about you. Now it's such a mess here, oh, we are just stressed here. Used to be so easy with you. Now I must confess here, oh, I must confess, dear, don't think I'm in love with you. Winter is coming and I don't know what to do, and there's no more use in running, no more running to you. And I don't want your loving, I don't wanna be just friends, knowing all this time we were playing pretend. Playing pretend.
It's a mystery.